Good morning. Lauren Soborowski on the Steinway, renowned local pianist and my piano teacher. I'm a beginning student again. After 50 years, I can play Reveille badly. It's high altitude, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and water doesn't boil thoroughly here or stay hot long. So I'm trying to drink my third cup of coffee quickly before it gets cold. I'm Cate Boddington, and this is Coffee with Cate. As usual at 10 o'clock, I'm still in my pink and white striped pajamas, my fuzzy chenille pink bathrobe, and my pink fuzzy slippers. I like pink. I'm sitting lotus position on my comfy, saggy couch in my upstairs room in our 150-year-old house. The couch needs to be recovered, but a large old bedspread in pale golds and greens makes do. The floor is bare pine with one old auction peacock blue circular fringed rug in the middle of the room. My new black Harley boots standing in the center. I am surrounded by big pillows, some striped red and white, some in a worn, rose-colored peony chintz. A faded blue and white old quilt and several knotted cream and mauve afghans are on the couch. On the pillows next to the windowsill, right here, are stacked some 20 catalogs and New Yorker magazines, which the cat, Alice, likes to lie on. Also a turquoise hobo purse bag with a baby blanket I'm stitching and my sewing supplies, and a pile of white pillowcases waiting to be ironed for our Airbnb. Late October, and the leaves on the big elms and ash trees outside my windows are flying in the dusty winds on this sunny day, bright yellow against the azure blue sky. Wide white shelves of 3 generations' favorite children's books line one end of my room. Tiny old red hardbound volumes of Keats and Shelley and Shakespeare, a ceramic phrenology head, a mahogany hourglass, a wire Christmas tree with ornaments, my green 2016 Cubs World Series ball cap, an empty birdhouse, and a group of 4 seated wood anthropomorphic forest animals in blue knitted scarves. Those are among the dusty objects which decorate the top mantel of the white wooden TV cabinet. Paintings, landscapes, and portraits, mostly local artists, and framed photos of generations of children cover every bit of the pale peach walls. White baby's breath and pink carnations last a full week in an antique Japanese gilt vase. There is a tea table piled with china cups and saucers and an electric tea kettle in the corner by the fireplace, and a green wicker chair with several wool sweaters on one arm. There is clutter everywhere, in baskets and boxes. The room is either shabby chic or a crazy mess, depending on your point of view, and that more or less describes me. Everyone knows where to find me here in my retreat. This is where I hide at parties. This is where I talk with my friends. And today, my sister Stephanie Kane is sitting cross-legged across from me. Steph works as an independent travel director for clients, including New York Life, and she travels most of the weeks of the month. We are only 13 months apart in age, Irish twins, and neither of us remembers life without the other. We've both lived in Colorado Springs since we were toddlers. when our parents moved here in 1957 to open a bookstore. My sister and I are talking about our childhood memories. The kids of two young Ivy League beatnik bookstore owners living in an all-blonde nuclear modern suburb where all the dads went to work, the moms stayed home, and the kids roamed the neighborhood yards and alleys and adjacent pasture lands until dark. It was in this white, suburban, Western context that our perception of Indian Americans had been drawn from the historic stereotype which 1960s society and literature portrayed in white America. Please bear in mind, if any of the following material is offensive, it is in the spirit of racial bravery, acknowledging our white privilege and exposing our ignorance, that we hope to face our socialization and promote healing. We're talking about bedtime fears. In this case, the fear of being attacked by Native Americans, the Indians of our imagination, who figured in our daily play, attacking us innocent settlers and tough cowboys with war whoops and ponies, bows and arrows and tomahawks. It was a time when every kid in the Skyway Park subdivision wanted a plastic bow and arrow set and a mass-market feather headdress. Mo and Ben Gadd, two older brothers who would be drafted in a few years to Vietnam, would, if their little sister and staff and I begged, paint Indian designs on our skinny bare chests with war paint from their school art projects. We would climb behind trees and redwood fences, hide behind clumps of rhubarb, junipers, and Pfister bushes, and leap out whooping on unsuspecting toddlers. This was 1960s Western suburbia in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and all we knew about the Native Americans who had camped and ridden where our houses stood came from watching TV westerns and cartoons and reading, as my sister did, an occasional children's western novel. The one book she read over and over again was a true history of a settler child kidnapped by the Shawnee, Blue Jacket, war chief of the Shawnee.
Just as Charlie was finishing skinning the rabbit they had shot that the boys heard a slight noise and looked up to find themselves in the center of a ring of 11 Shawnee warriors, some with tomahawks in their hands. Charlie went pale and dropped his knife, but Duke reached out and touched his arm. "Easy," he whispered. "They aren't painted, so that means they're not a war party. Probably a hunting party. Sit still." Moving slowly himself, Duke got to his feet and tossed the bow and quiver to the ground.
Now, Steph and I know damn near everything about each other, but I never really knew why my younger sister was obsessed with Indians from the time she was a little kid. I played Cowboys and Indians with her now and then, but I wasn't as interested. I know she worried at night and wet the bed, too afraid to cross the laundry room, the playroom, and go all the way up the stairs and through the dining room and the dark hallway to the one bathroom in the house. We shared a bed in a dark basement bedroom until I was in the 6th grade, when I moved upstairs to have my very own room. Then she began sleeping with a rock pick under her pillow. I asked Steph to tell me about her particular nighttime fear, Indians. Steph, thanks a lot for coming over this morning. I know you like to sleep in on your days off, so thank you.
You are very welcome. It is my pleasure, and your fabulous coffee makes it all worthwhile. The majority of my bad dreams were about Indians. I had what might be called a morbid fascination. I was both fascinated by them and afraid of them at the same time. We were very well aware of the conflicts in the West. We learned about it in social studies. We went down to New Mexico every summer and saw the Navajo Indians at the Pueblos, in Taos and Santa Fe, and saw the TV shows, all the TV shows. And in most of them, the Indians were portrayed as vicious savages, and so they were frightening. That was what society was telling me to do, was be afraid, and yet I was very interested by them. I had moccasins that I bought down in Santa Fe that went up to my knees, that had fringe on them, real suede Indian moccasins that I'd wear with a pair of brown corduroy pants, and I had a suede jacket with fringe on the arms, and so that I could look the part.
The leader of the group was a squat, unsmiling individual wearing a buckskin leggings and ankle-high moccasins. Duke nodded to him, but got no response. "Manis," the youth said, a forced smile on his face, remembering the word Chakwi had told him meant knife. With his left hand, using only thumb and forefinger, he pulled the weapon from his belt and dropped it to the ground outside the bow. "Ni kino," Duke said pleasantly, while Charlie watched and listened in amazement. "Waza ishi ki." He pointed to Charlie, who was still crouched, more or less frozen in fear, and added, "Ni ja ja." "Na matasi ti," my brother. No kill.
Somehow I eventually got over the nightmares, I think, about them. Because my most fervent wish actually was to be kidnapped by the Indians and to be taken into their tribe and eventually become a warrior and ride my horse bareback all over the plains and hunt and fish and shoot a bow and arrow and live out in a teepee and know the earth and talk to the Great Spirit and have that life that sounded just perfect to me.
At last, Duke showed his even white teeth in a broad grin. He turned and picked up both knives, the bow and the quiver, and handed them to the leader. Then he turned to Charlie and spoke earnestly. "Charlie, listen carefully. They're Kis Pawokathas, warrior Shawnees. The one I've been talking to is a sub-chief. His name is Pakitiwawa Kibatarle, which means Blacktooth. I got him to promise to let you go home, unharmed, if I go with them. They say they want to adopt me into their tribe." He held up a hand as the boy, his eyes filling with tears and chin beginning to tremble, started to protest. "No, Charlie, listen to me. I'm going. It's what I've always dreamed of, and it's the only way. I'm a little scared, but I think I'll be all right. It's the only way. If I refuse to go with them now, they'll have to kill both of us. You go on home. Tell Ma and Pa and the others what happened. Tell them not to follow us, or else they might kill me. Or they might get killed. Remember that now. They aren't to follow. It'll only cause trouble." A long tear dribbled down Charlie's right cheek, and he brushed it away with the back of his hand.
So I would lie in bed at night, and that probably added to the frequency of my bad dreams about the Indians. I would lie in bed at night and think about what I would do when they climbed over the back fence and attacked our little tract home in the Skyway subdivision. And so my original plan was that I would hide, and I would be very quiet. And so I would practice being very quiet and not breathing deeply. And I would think about places to hide. Unfortunately, it was a pretty little house, and there weren't very many places to hide. My closet wasn't going to work. Under the bed wasn't going to work. There really weren't that many places to hide, so I had to ditch that idea. But I came up with a brilliant idea, and that was to pretend I was dead, so that when they came creeping down the back steps and through the basement into my bedroom, they would find me lying dead on the ground and then leave me alone. So I would practice lying in bed, holding my breath, not moving, not moving my eyeballs, not making any sound at all. And I was really quite accomplished at this. So when I invited our father in to see my progress, and he came in and said, well, that's really good, but, they'll scalp you anyways. That wasn't a very appealing thought. So to hell with that plan.
A regular army captain, Charles Van Sweringer, suddenly loomed and thrust a bayonet at him. The blade slit Blue Jacket's side, and instinctively the chief wheeled and backward-handed his tomahawk deep into the soldier's belly. The man fell upon his back, and Blue Jacket pounced on him, grasped his hair in one hand, and felt for his knife with the other. The soldier's eyes opened, and they were then widened, the fear turning to amazement as his gaze took in the features of the Indian chief. His gaze locked on a small white scar, like an inverted V, over the chief's right eyebrow. The scar that years ago, when the boys were young, he had accidentally put there. "Duke," he whispered hoarsely. "Is it Duke? Isn't it? Don't you know me, Duke? It's your brother. Duke." His voice rose to a scream. "Duke, I'm Charlie." He stiffened and then died, and his body relaxed. Blue Jacket stared into his dead brother's face. It was Charlie. A great roaring seemed to be sounding in his ears. No, he shook his head. No, he had no brothers, but had the Shawnees. With a flick of his knife, he lifted the scalp and leaped away to continue the assault, stuffing the hairpiece into his blouse and shrieking a cry that was more than mere battle lust, a cry which carried with him deep inner pain.
Not to portray him in such a bad light, but my father's comment to that idea was, you're a girl, you'd have to be a squaw. Even the name sounds bad. Who would want to be a squaw? Whatever it is, it sounds terrible, but certainly being a squaw did not appeal to me at all. I didn't even want to be a Girl Scout, much less a squaw. So that sort of diminished my fascination, which then just turned into reading books and studying the history, and continued to study in college.
Thank you, Steph. It was the 1960s in the suburbs of the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and all we knew about Native Americans came from watching inaccurate and irreverent, often racist and demeaning, old shoot-'em-up John Ford westerns on TV, and reading children's books about Indian life. This mostly fake history was all very real to us as we played in the shadows of Pikes Peak, in the hills below Cheyenne Mountain, at the eastern end of Ute Pass, where we occasionally found century-old carved stone arrowheads among the cow pies and red rocks and yucca in the pastures and arroyos beyond the manicured front lawns and curved asphalt streets that overlay the ancient Ute and Cheyenne lands in the foothills of Front Range, Colorado. Steph, thanks for coming over this morning. I like remembering the two little girls we were and the funny games we played in all seriousness. Now I know why you practiced playing dead at night, couldn't get up to go to the bathroom, and slept with a rock pick under your pillow. I'm Cate Boddington, and you've been listening to Coffee with Cate. Please visit me for the next podcast, when we take another look at the 1960s from a child's perspective and talk about irreverent and highly unusual bedtime lullabies sung by mildly inebriated parents. The children's novel, Blue Jacket, War Chief of the Shawnee, published in 1969 by Little Brown and Company, was written by Alan W. Eckert and is still available at your local bookstore. Excerpts were read by Will Boddington.
Music slowly set in, and the boys lived happily ever after.